Hi, welcome back to Sanz Plans channel. Glad that you're here. Today, I thought it might be really helpful to kind of go back to something that I believe in, which is that we may not all be in the same boat, but we are all in the same ocean. And right now, given what's going on in the world with the global pandemic of the coronavirus, the ocean is very, very rough and very angry, and we're all in it together this time. And so no matter what your own particular boat has got in it, whether that's work stress or recent unemployment, whether you're parenting, whether you're alone going through this, whether you're in a relationship and you're having some stresses or some struggles related to that, no matter what your situation is, you have some unique stresses trying to deal with the rapid changes and the unique stresses of a pandemic. So what I thought might be the most helpful to be able to share is what psychologists and mental health professionals have been able to learn from the science about resilience, which is what helps people to be able to thrive and to cope under extreme and challenging circumstances. And resilient people know how to do certain things, and you can learn how to do those things too. It does take some time, it does take some practice, and I'm hoping that in subsequent videos I can spend more time on each of these things, helping you to learn some of those coping skills and some of those practices of resilient people. Therapists have had to learn how to do some of these things from the time that they start their graduate education. And certainly, if not by then, when they begin to really begin their residencies or their internships and their practice, in order to prevent what's called compassion fatigue. And now we all have to engage in learning how to do these things in order to prevent what I'm going to call pandemic fatigue. So the first thing that people who are really resilient do is they put their self-care first. And you've probably heard, I don't know how many times, this idea that you put on your oxygen mask first before you help other people if you're on an airplane that's in trouble. And the idea simply is, no matter what sort of analogy that you use, if you're drawing from a well to be able to, give water to your plants and to do your dishes and to make your food that day, you have to fill up your own cup first. If the water that you're drawing from a well to be able to take care of a whole bunch of people is not replenished on a daily basis, it's going to go dry. And I often recommend to my clients that they really take very seriously this notion that you have to be able to give from an overflowing cup, that you really do risk burnout and a lot of compassion fatigue if you don't take care of yourself first. So that's going to be one of the first things that really resilient people do. People who are able to get through especially extended periods of time of high stress, is that they really do put a priority on making sure that they are okay. It's not that they do not care about other people. I think highly resilient people are very caring and compassionate. But again, to prevent compassion fatigue, self-care has to come first. The second thing that really resilient people do, and really high-functioning people of all kinds do, is they develop routines and get some structure going in their lives that sort of help to prop them up during times of a lot of uncertainty or change. So in my field, we can call those things executive functioning skills, but we're really just talking about establishing the habits and really making them habit so that you don't have to think about them very much. You almost automate these things in your life by the time that you get really good at it, so that these things act as the supports to hold you up during really, really difficult, stressful times. And in the field of mental health, we talk about the big four of nutrition, activity, good sleep, and stress management as the four things that we want to find a way that you begin to establish as just regular, daily, or weekly habits, and learn how to do those things almost without having to think about them because you've got them just so established in your life. And that this type of structure and establishing really healthy routines is what helps to make you extremely resilient. The third thing that highly resilient people do is they have learned how to work with their mind, with their thoughts, and with their attention. This is not an easy thing to do. Our minds like to sort of take control. Our anxieties, our worries, like to kind of run away with us at times. But really resilient people are able to get through particularly high stress times by knowing how to work with their mind and with their attention. So one of the things that could be really, really helpful for you to learn if you don't already is to learn mindfulness, and that is part of a meditative practice of being able to stay in the present moment, as opposed to letting your mind wander into the past or into the future. And particularly now, as we're trying to adjust to so much change, where when we think about the past, we get really sad for the times that we used to be able to have, and we're feeling really a lot of grief about the losses that we're experiencing of what used to be our normal. And if we let our minds go too far into the future, we're likely to become very anxious as we are worried about what's going to happen next. And will things get really bad? We could start to catastrophize. So being able to learn how to stay in the present moment and stay very mindful is one way to stay resilient. You're likely to be much, much less stressed if you're able to do that. Another thing that you can do is to learn how to control your mind in such a way that you stay away from the outcome of habits that you're trying to establish, or projects or things that you're trying to stay engaged in, and instead focus on the process. It's another slight, sort of form of mindfulness, but it makes a huge difference when it comes to feeling discouraged about seeing progress as you're trying to establish those habits that we were talking about earlier. So again, working with the mind, knowing how to stay present and focused and engage in the process and not worrying so much about the outcome are all things that highly resilient people do, and you can learn how to do those too. All of these things are important, but probably the thing that makes all of these things work is the component of compassion. And that is having compassion for yourself and having compassion for other people. And that really is just sort of taking the attitude that you're going to give yourself grace, and you're going to say to yourself every day that you are doing the best that you can given the circumstances, and that that's going to be enough, that you're not going to ask more of yourself than that. It's really not fair to ask more of yourself than that. You can't do better than the best that you can do. And given these kinds of circumstances, the best that we can do may look very different than the best that we used to be able to do under different circumstances. So being compassionate and kind towards ourselves as we're going through this time is really important, particularly if you're also then going to ask yourself to try to learn some of these other new ways of coping or establish some new healthy habits. It's not going to be easy. You have to be kind to yourself as you're learning how to do that. And practicing compassion towards other people right now is also extremely important. Everyone is doing the best that they can right now given the circumstances, and their best may look very different from your best. And remember that the best that they can do right now might also look very different than the best that they used to be able to do. So providing compassion and some grace for them as well right now is something that you can also do, and it helps actually you to maintain your sense of resiliency. You are less stressed when you are less judgmental of yourself and of other people. So these are all things that people who are highly resilient do. They take care of themselves first. They establish routine and structure and executive functioning skills so that those big 4 healthy habits for good mental health are established and running fairly well in their lives. They know how to stay focused in the present moment and control their attention. and they are practicing compassion for themselves and for other people. These are all things that you can learn how to do. I don't advise that you try to learn how to do all of them at the same time. I want you to think about which one of those things you need to be practicing or learning how to do the most right now. Is it putting yourself first? Is it establishing some type of routine with one healthy habit? Is it just trying to stay right here, right now, and not dwelling on the past or worrying about the future? Or is it practicing some compassion towards yourselves or for other people? Think about that, and think about what would be helpful for us to cover in our next video session, and give me some feedback about that. I'm really looking forward to going through all of these different helpful practices of resilient people as we go forward, and I'm looking forward to seeing you again soon.